Hi everyone, how are you going? Early in the morning. My name is Jon. I'm a software engineer for Foundry. I'm going to lead you through some examples of how to use Python, the scripting language in Nuke. Most of these examples have actually been put together for the short film Seed and have been used on that production. Later on, some of the guys will actually be using some of the tools during their presentations. Firstly, what we'll do is we'll start off with some basic building blocks of how to use Python in Nuke. We'll go through them interactively in Nuke. And once we know the basics, I'm then going to actually throw over to Frank, my good friend over here, who's going to show us how to build a Gizmo or a macro in shake terms. After that, we'll go into some more complex examples from the scripts put together for production. I'm going to show you how to create an automatic pan and tile, custom write node, and a few other time-saving scripts. Finally, to wrap up, I'm going to show you a custom Python panel, or Python knob, for an upcoming release of Nuke 5.2. Also, remember that all the examples that I'm going to show you will be available for download from our website after the Masterclass, so you can take them apart later. You don't have to memorize everything now. Okay, cool, let's get into it. So, first of all, what is Python? Python is a scripting language, and scripting languages were traditionally used just to automate simple things, like AppleScript or a shell script. But these days, scripting languages are getting more advanced, and whole applications are being built in scripting languages like Python. Now, Nuke uses Python quite a lot to build the UI. So, like all the toolbars that you see, the menus, and even in 5.2, the panels, you'll be able to build in Python. So why would you need to learn it? Well, if you can learn a bit of Python, you'll be able to add your own menus, your own toolbars and shortcuts, and also automate things that you do every day. And also learning it is good because it's used in other applications. So if you know Python for Nuke, it's crossover to Maya and Houdini and other applications that also use Python as their script editor. Script editor is my next bit. Okay, I'm just going to show you now where you type commands into Nuke, which is the script editor here. You can actually pull it down from the menu here and select it if it's not there. I've got it saved in a layout here just to make it a bit clearer. So you can see the script editor is divided into two halves. So the top half up here is like the output. So this is where all the output of your Python gets printed. And down here is the bit where you can actually type interactive commands into Nuke. So let's get into it. I'm going to type our very first Python command. Hello, Master Class. And then we're going to run it by pressing this little button here, which executes the Python. So let's just do that. And hey, it's printed, hello, Master Class. And you say, hello, Jon. Okay, so that's our first command that we've typed. Now, this print is like a built-in command in Python, but what Nuke does is it imports its own commands into Python, and they're all contained within this container called Nuke, funnily enough. So within Nuke, I've got another container called nodes, which contains all the nodes in Nuke. Then from there, I can say create a blur. Right, let's select that as well, create a blur. So let's go up here and press the execute button again. And hey, we've created a blur, excellent. You can see here up here in the result, it says blur object at X, some weird number. So what it's done is created a blur, but we can't access that blur at the moment. So what I'm going to do, this is a little tip for you as well, is I'm going to press this arrow back. This is like a history, so I don't have to keep retyping stuff. So I'm just going to go back to there, and I'm going to assign it to something. So I'm going to go b equals Nuke blur, and I'm going to run that. I'm going to use the shortcut. And now you can see that the blur object's not being printed anymore. It's actually been sucked into this variable called b. Now what I can do now is I can do print b. So I'll just do print b. And you can see it's printing out all the parameters that are contained within that blur. If I change that blur, and then I do print b again, you can see that the size is now changed and everything else has remained the same. So you can see that it's interactive there. What about if we want to just view one of these values here, parameters, or as we call it in Nuke, it's called a knob. So let's just print out one of the parameters, and we can do that by this funny square bracket thing, and then get the value, which is like this. So let's just do that, run that, and you can see we've got 15. Okay, so we can get the value. What about setting the value? What I can do here is I can do set value. Okay, and set it to maybe, let's set it back to 0. Set back to 0, okay. We're getting somewhere here. How about doing things to more than one thing in your node graph here? What we can do is we can actually get a list of all of the nodes in Nuke by going Nuke all nodes. So let's just print that out. And you can see here it's printed out, okay, I've got a blur and another blur, which we created, and our read, which is here, and then our viewer, which is attached to the bottom. Okay, starting to get somewhere here because we're getting a list. What about if we wanted to actually change more than one value at once? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a few blurs. I'm going to try and change more than one at a time. So I'm going to do for node in nuke.all nodes. But this time I'm going to supply a filter. I'm going to say, give me only the blur nodes. And then I'm going to do the same as before, set value, and I'm going to set them all to 20. So what that's saying here is I'm going to go, for every node in all nodes, I'm going to set the value of the blur to 20. So let's try that. And there you go. So it's set that to 20. And now if I can find my mouse, if we look at all of the blur nodes, they're all set to 20. So now we're starting to see that it could save you some time, because actually going in there and manually having to change every single one of the blurs to 20 would maybe take longer than running that bit of code. Okay, before I move on, I'm just going to show you the help as well that's available in Nuke. So, I mean, I've been telling you about these commands like set value and all nodes and so on, but how are you supposed to remember all that stuff? We can actually type help on anything in Python, in fact, and then get a list of help. So I'm going to do help on Nuke, for instance. If I run that, we get a lot of stuff printed here. But if we scroll up, you can see that it's got like all of the different commands that are available inside that object help. So lots of different things. So why don't we try one of these? For instance, this one here, selected node. Hope you can read it up the back there. So I'm going to select the read node here, and I'm going to try that. I'm going to do print nuke dot selected node and see what happens. Oh, cool. So we're getting out all the parameters of the read node. Okay, I'm going to move on now to automate something and show you how to hook up nodes. So typically when you create a 3D setup in Nuke, you create 3 nodes. You create a scanline render, a camera and a scene node, and then you hook them up in the correct way. So we're going to automate that. Now to save on typing, I'm actually going to load one that I've previously typed. So there's a little button up here that says load a script. So if I click on that button, we get a little file browser, and then I can load in a bit of Python that I've already prepared. Just saves you watching me doing all the typing. So let's just step through what's going on here. First, we're creating a camera, then we're creating a scanline render, then a scene node, exactly the same as before. Then this is the bit that's a little bit different. We're saying for the scanline render, I want to set input 1 to the scene, and then input 2 to the camera. So let's just try running that. And scroll over a bit. Okay, cool. We've created those 3 nodes. Okay, still we're having to type things in the script editor. Let's try and get this a little bit quicker. Just load up the next one. And what we're going to do here is we're going to make this a little bit quicker by putting this keyword here, def. And what this says is I'm going to define a new function called quick3d, which has got the same code that we put in there before. So let's just delete these nodes here and run this. And you'll notice when I run that, it didn't actually create any nodes. It just didn't do anything. But what it did actually was created a new command. So now what I can do is I can type quick3d only and then run that, and we get our 3 nodes. So we're starting to get like a little bit quicker here because it's only one word we have to type now instead of a bunch of code. But still, we don't want to really type stuff into the script editor to get our quick3d to come down. what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a toolbar that does that for us. So I want to add it up here to the nodes menu up here. So how do we do that? I'm just going to delete these nodes. I'm glad you asked. Okay, what we do here is we go, okay, I'm going to ask Nuke for the toolbar called nodes, which is the one up here. And then with that toolbar, I'm going to add a new button called Master Class with an icon that Ben kindly put together for us. So let's just run that, see what happens. Ah, cool. We've got a little Master Class icon up there. But at the moment, nothing's hooked up. So we've just, we've got items here, but if we click on that, we've got nothing. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to add our Quick 3D to that menu that we just created. So we've got Quick 3D there. And what I'm going to do as well is I'm going to add a shortcut. So you can see at the end, there's that +D. What that's saying is I want to do a Shift D or a capital D to run that Quick 3D command. So the first word here is the name in the menu, and then Quick 3D is that command that we defined earlier. So let's just run that. And let's have a look up here. Ah, cool. We've got our little menu item, Quick 3D. So let's just try that out. Okay, so we've created 3 nodes. And let's just try the shortcut as well. I'll just delete those. So Shift D. Ah, now we're starting to get things moving a bit quicker. Only problem... Actually, no, I'm going to show one more thing. One more thing, which is one that Frank really likes. So we'll have to show you this one because it's quite cool. I'll just show you this. This is quite neat as well. This is a little one that Frank put together. This just shows the looping as well. So what it's doing here is we've got a new command called toggle viewer pipes. So you can see here in the viewer we've got a bunch of different viewers attached, because in Nuke you can have a viewer attached to more than one node. So we've got 4 there. So what it's saying here in this bit of code is for all the nodes called viewer, I want to get this value called hide input, and I want to set it to the opposite, which is not. So not the current value. So if it's on, we're going to turn it off. If it's off, we're going to turn it on. So it's a toggle. And then I'm going to add that to, rather than the toolbar, I'm going to add it to a pre-existing menu, which is the Nuke edit node menu. So let's just run that. I'm also going to give it a shortcut, Alt-T. Let's just run that. And now if we go down to the edit menu in Nuke, and then we go down to the node menu, and right at the bottom we've added this new one called, oh, it's off the screen. Trust me, it's there. It says toggle viewer inputs. Now let's just try that out now. Alt-T. Ah, look at that. Cool. So if things get a bit messy, you can just toggle them off and on. And I think Frank will be using that a bit. Will you, Frank?
Oh, I'm sure I will.
Okay.
Now that you said it, I'll probably forget.
Okay. Okay, one more thing. The problem with what we've got here is we've typed it all into the script editor. And when we type it into the script editor, that's great. But when you restart Nuke, it's all gone. So when we have no toolbars, we have no commands anymore. So what I need to do now is I need to put it into a file that Nuke reads at startup. So what I've put down here is everything that we've put in so far. I'm going to save that now by clicking on the Save button here. I'm going to go to my .nuke directory, which is in your home directory. There's a folder called .nuke. And I'm going to create a file called menu.py. So menu.py is the file that Nuke reads every time it starts up to add in customizations. So you need to put all your commands in there. This is similar to the nrui.h file in Shake. So let's just do that. Save. And let's quit Nuke now. Goodbye, Nuke. And restart. And with any luck, Quick 3D. Brilliant. So now we've got a toolbar, and let's just see the toggle as well. Toggle. Cool, it's all working. So that kind of wraps up my little basic introduction, and I'm now going to throw over to Frank, who's going to show us how to build a gizmo or a macro in Shake terms. And then once he's done his gizmo, we're going to then add it to a toolbar in Nuke. So over to you, Frank.
Thank you, John. Okay, I've got a little script prepared here just to show a basic setup for doing dust busting and stuff. And I'll just quickly walk you through it to make you understand what it's doing, and then I'll show you how to convert this into a gizmo. to use it later on, different shots, different plates. So let's have a look at what it's doing. First, we have our input, which is this nice and dirty sky plate here. This part over here is creating the alpha channel that will define where the dirt is that we want to remove. I'm going to ignore the nice ghosting that's happening all over the place for now. So I'm using a paint setup. This could be a Bezier shape or a Luma key or a whole comp tree that provides some sort of alpha channel that defines the dirt in any way, or pre-rendered images. So I'm just using a shuffle to delete all incoming RGB and A channels and just put them to black. I'm doing this just to make sure that my incoming format is always the same as the RGB plate I'm painting on. So with the paint node in place, I can then happily paint away. Delete that stroke for now. The second step is simply inverting the alpha channel and copying it back into our plate here. If I go to matte overlay, we'll see something that's similar to Photoshop that just overlays the alpha channel where it's opaque. It'll show up as transparent red. So I can now paint where my dust hits are. I'll just hit M to toggle back to RGB. And so we've got this alpha matte here. The next step is we'll just pre-mold the whole thing to essentially punch in a hole into the plate where the dust specks are, and then we'll blur it by quite a significant amount. This will scatter all the edge color over across into the holes that we created to give us a clue which edge pixels might actually be relevant to the hole that we want to fill. And by unpre-multiplying the same thing again, including the alpha channel, we're actually filling the hole all together and bringing all the transparencies back to their solid RGB color. So obviously we've got the dust removed, but the plate is kind of useless by now. So we'll just use the original alpha channel to key mix the original plate back on top and only keep the repaired values. So now we're kind of making it work. So this is just a very simple setup that can be enhanced quite a bit using Luma keys, and obviously because it's built on blurs, it's not going to work very well in high detailed areas, but it's really good to quickly remove dust hits from areas that have very slight gradients, where the normal clone stamp tool usually leaves dark or light smudges and you just can't get the angle right. So anyway, now we want to reuse this, and yes, I'm going to toggle the viewer pipes off. So in order to make this a gizmo, you just select your whole setup, and under the etc. menu, you create a group. So what just happened is Nuke created a group and pasted everything that was selected inside of it. And then it opened the panel called Group 1 Node Graph in here, which holds the internals of it. So this little sub-DAG or sub-node graph, if you will, lives inside the group here in our main node graph. So now I'm going to make this a bit generic. You see that by grouping it, Nuke added an input node to all unconnected pipes within. And all those pipes, all those input nodes inside the group node, if we go back to our main window, represent a pipe here. So back in our group node, we actually don't want any of those inputs connected to the paint node. We just delete them here and create the ones we want, which you find is again under the etc. menu, input. Now the input nodes are really only reserved for this sort of function in Nuke. They're really only for internals in the group. So we want to make a gizmo with two inputs, one for the RGB and one for our matte input. So the first input node I'm going to call IMG as the image input. I'm going to take that, and while I hold it, drag it on top of my read node and hold. Oh, it's a Mac. Hold Shift and Command. Shift Command or Shift Control. And this will swap the two nodes in the tree without actually disconnecting the pipes, which is a nice little shortcut to remember. We don't need the plate because we don't want to hard code it into our tool. And I'm going to create another input node and go back to the etc. menu. Because the last node I created was an input node in the etc. menu, all I have to do is middle mouse click on the same menu and I get the same node again, so I don't have to go back into the menu. To rename this one, this time around I'll use a hotkey which is N. All those hotkeys you can find in the menus, so you don't have to memorize them, you'll stumble across them as you go. This one is our mat input, so I'll call it mat. And replace my paint setup with that. So this can go as well. Oops, not all of it. Look, undo works. Right, so this is our generic setup. Whatever image the user wants to pipe in, whatever mat wants to pipe in, goes through the tree and then is output. So we'll go back into our main graph, and you can see that the pipes in the group node are now called the way I labeled my input nodes within. What I like doing is hook up the pipes to my original script to make sure that it's actually doing what I expect it to do. And this output of the keymix node should be the same exact thing as the output of a new group node. And we'll just compare that, and you see it's doing the right thing. Cool. So the next step, to actually save this to disk as our new tool file, as our new Gizmo file, is we just double-click on the node, go to the Export as Gizmo button, and save it somewhere into our plugin path, which I've got one level up. And I'm going to call it heel brush. Call it whatever you like. .gizmo. Not Gizmo, Gizmo. So that's what you get when you only have one cup of coffee. Right, save. And now I'll go to the script editor and just do a quick check if it works. Just like Jon just showed you, nuke.nodes holds all the nodes. And now that I've created the Gizmo, there should be a new node available called Nuke Nodes Heel Brush. I'm going to execute that, and there's our new tool. One last thing to show you. The nice thing about this is you can quickly go back to group mode, because what I actually forgot doing is expose this blur slider. I wanted to expose that functionality, the size control for the user later on, so they can dial in the result. So I'll open the heel brush panel, which is now a Gizmo. You can tell that by the shape of the node. It's got a flat side on the left and a pointy bit on the right, which means this is a Gizmo as opposed to a group node or a compiled node. So I'm going to go in here, and you see the copy to group button. Hit that, and everything from the external file is now brought back into a group node, which we can now again open up with that little show button here, and we're back in the game. So now everything is hard-coded in the script. You're not relying on an external file anymore. So just to quickly create my interface for it, because there's nothing really to control the effect of it, I'll right-click anywhere in the panel, go to Manage User Knobs, and I could add my whole interface from scratch using all sorts of different user knobs here, from drop-down lists to script buttons, integers, floating point, whatever. But I really just want to grab that blur knob, so I'll choose pick instead, and this gives me a representation of the Gizmo's internals. I'm going to go find the blur node here, go into the blur controls, and the size knob is what I want to expose. Hit OK. We'll see a list of user knobs that we're exposing in the list here, and we also see the panel right here. So I'll just confirm that, say, yep, that's what I want. Quick check if it works again. Hook it up to the mat and the RGB image, and play with that blur slider a bit, and yeah, there you go. So I'll go back into the group and repeat the step that I did last time. Go to Export as Gizmo and just overwrite the tool that I had before, and check if it's doing the right thing, create it, and yeah, this time around it comes up with a size knob. So obviously you don't want to go into the script editor again and do the scripting bit, so I'm going to throw it back over to Jon to tie it into the interface that he created.